I was interested by some of the techniques you used, such as the film starts off Technicolor, you know, in Thailand or wherever it was, where he goes to the Buddhist retreat. But then a lot of the interior scenes are really kind of washed out. A lot of the sort of sciencey scenes, which I believe is the technical term, are kind of tinted yellow. So you're already kind of suggesting the emotional inner turmoil through kind of the way that the film is shot.
Yeah, so the film visually is told from David's point of view, and it's a common device in sci-fi film, actually, to use extreme color palettes to help transport the audience, you know, to a different world. And David's a computer programmer, and so we thought of him as someone who compartmentalizes his life. And so we created these 5 visual worlds, we called them, and each one had a unique color scheme and a unique method of camera movement. So like the garage world is green and vibrant and alive and very kinetic handheld camera movement throughout. And that's where David's sort of the most alive and inventing and creative, but it also looks like a horror movie too, because it's dangerous what he's doing. And then you contrast that, yeah, to his home world, and that's these lifeless violets, and the camera's always locked off there, it never moves. And that reflects his relationship with his wife and his daughter and a sort of broken marriage. And then, yeah, the outside world, we called it, with these saturated yellows and lots of lens flares. Yeah, David spends all of his time inside a garage. I wanted it to feel like when you go see a matinee movie and then you step outside and the sun kind of hurts and it's uncomfortable. And the camera movement there is always a bit paranoid and voyeuristic. And so, yeah, we wanted David to be uncomfortable in that world. And the CIA world is red, white, and blue and robotic camera movements, and that's a play on the American flag. And then, yeah, Cambodia is the most, the jungle world's the most like natural hues and slow meditative camera movements.
Nice. Could you talk a little bit about the casting? How did you end up with a Brit as your lead?
Let's see. We auditioned lots of people. Yeah, we had open call casting. We did the casting ourselves. Got a little office in Glendale near Hollywood, and just, yeah, auditioned literally thousands of actors for all the parts. And yeah, to find these great diamonds in the rough, you know, this great undiscovered talent with Thomas and Artie and Amber and Christine and Steve, really the whole cast, I think, really did a great job. Yeah, I don't know if you want to say what it was like coming on at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I guess first of all, I'm not originally British, I'm American. So I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and my wife is English. And as I was in LA, like, the script came across from my manager there. And I mean, it's one of these projects, as soon as you see it, I guess as an artist, anybody seeing it, you read it, you see the locations, you see the story, you see what they're going, and you see the specificity that Khalil really brings to it. And I don't think there's any way that you can say, I don't want to be involved in this, because this is, as an actor, this is what you want to do. It's like, it's exotic, it's thought-provoking, and it's really something that is happening now. I mean, I guess there's no way to say no. You have to get it. You're like, call up your agent. I'm doing this. He's like, well, you haven't got in. I'm doing this. We're doing it. We're all going. Get me in there. Okay. So,
no matter how stupid your hair looks in the movie.
Well, I mean, you got to make sacrifices, right? So, I mean, hair grows back, thank goodness. But
and he had to shave it. He had to shave it twice too, because we did it all in LA, and then when we went to Cambodia, he had to shave it all again. And yeah.
And luckily, my head looks good shaved. So I was worried about it. I was like, how's the dome gonna look? I mean, it's a big consideration, but it was fine. It's fine.
And thinking of some of, I mean, obviously it's a relatively low-budget movie, so you wouldn't have access to, like, you know, CGI bolts of lightning going between people's heads or whatever. But things like the remote control things stuck to, you know, people's brains, that does kind of evoke the idea of everyone walking around with a Bluetooth headset, you know, as if we're already going down the route of desperately always wanting to be connected to some kind of telepresence.
Yeah, I think for me it's not that far-fetched, I guess. I also, even with the technology and the props and, you know, the computer software and hardware you see, I almost wanted it to feel a bit retro, like maybe this is a story that happened 5 or 10 years ago, actually, you know. Yeah, I think, yeah, we're all trying to be plugged in all the time, I guess. It's, yeah, in some ways it's not sci-fi, I guess.
Obviously, the soundscape of a movie like this is really important because you're thinking about the way that people's brains are interacting above and beyond normal human interaction through dialogue. I mean, were those the kind of considerations that you were thinking of?
Yeah, I mean, there's a sort of a talk about this resonance that builds up if you have two brains plugged into each other. And so I did a lot of work with sampling feedback and time stretching it and processing it and doing lots of things like that. But I also went and listened to, believe it or not, there's some crazy kind of neurologists who've taken the output of what a brain, the electromagnetic sort of field of what a brain does, plugged it into a synthesizer, and basically recorded the sound of it. So I went and listened to that, and that was sort of quite informed my approach, because there's during the score you have essentially this background that's kind of constantly there, upon which we put the orchestra and other things.
Because I suppose all kinds of physical mechanisms, people talk about the physics of the spheres and all that, have an interesting resonance that people probably don't normally think about. And when you start focusing those through the lens of music and scoring, you actually end up with something very interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, I was on the film for quite a long time, so I had a lot of opportunity to try things and send things over to Los Angeles and get notes back and put those things in the bin and start again, and all of those, which I loved doing, by the way.
But it was a bit of an unusual process.
Absolutely.
Writing music before the editing was done. So there was a great back and forth. I think improved the film so much, being able to get music in there and then recut to that music. And
I mean, absolutely. I think that one of the things that is rare is that often you'll get a cut of the film, and it's often quite a fluid cut, but you have no time. So you're going as quickly as you can, constantly chasing the cut, and you don't have a lot of opportunity for the music to influence the cut. And in our situation, it was a conversation very much between Howard, who was the editor, who did a great job on the film, and me, kind of constantly going backwards and forth.
I mean, obviously, as a director, we can tell that you did a really good job, but bringing in the producer, obviously when you have a film that's shot in numerous locations where people have their head shaved, and then you don't want to think, oh no, we need to shoot a scene where their hair's still there. I mean, was it a difficult thing to coordinate, bearing in mind that it was obviously a relatively low budget film?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually came on 2 months before we started filming, so Khalil had done a lot of the scheduling and things like that. So I came in with already a lot of things prepared, but it was halfway anyway, it was a little bit of a challenge trying to find all the locations. I think halfway through production we had only locked in 6 locations, so and we had 25 more to find. And so it was kind of, Khalil always uses the metaphor of a speeding train, and I'm just building the tracks as they went along. So and it ended up working out great. And Cambodia was also just trying to figure out where to kind of start, because this is both of our first features. And so we ended up teaming up with a great company there called Hanuman Films. That's a production company, and they took care of all our paperwork and kind of found us the ground crew there. So it ended up working out great.
Isn't that the name of the Indian monkey god?
Yes.
Well, I suppose you had to be nimble throughout. Would you say that you're an optimist about the way technology is going?
Yeah, totally. A lot of people, see the film and, think I'm anti-technology or, anti-scientific progress or something, and really to me, I think it's more about the answers to these issues lie somewhere in the space of being mindful of how we use technology, and I'm a big tech geek, I'm early adopter of whatever, all the latest gadgets and whatnot. So I'm not a pessimist, I don't think. I would definitely call myself an optimist. We had right across the way, there was a Web We Want panel that I participated in this afternoon. We talked about AI a lot, actually, and its relation to this film and stuff. And a lot of people are really scared about the future of AI, that might be destroying the world. But I don't lie in that camp either. I think, there's a lot more good out of technology and progress than the bad, and we just need to be careful how we use it. Well, there wasn't really many people to pitch it to. It's totally an independent production, independently financed, private sources. And so it was really, we had total creative control, which is maybe why you see the film you do. that yeah, I sort of relished that, I guess, with this first film. And we were lucky to, it maybe looks a lot bigger budget than it was. You know, we spent a lot less money than you think. And yeah, and an advantage of that was, yeah, I wasn't having to get studio notes or notes for, I mean, there were 4 of us producers in total, and we would have conversations back and forth. But pretty much, yeah, for better or worse, I guess, I had creative control. Yeah, well, I think in order to get a conversation going, you know, I mean, there are basically 2 kinds of stories. You have comedies and you have tragedies, you know, and happy endings maybe don't start conversations as much, you know, and so that's sort of my goal in the film is when you're walking out, hopefully you talk about some of these things with the person standing next to you. And yeah, you have to bring in the conflict and the darkest places it could go to sort of get that conversation going. And not just with, you know, quote unquote, you know, evil government organizations, but I think people need to be aware of corporations as well. And this stuff's happening right now. You know, when you're using Google, Facebook, Twitter, you know, everything you're doing is being tracked. All that data is being collected and used to then influence your thoughts to sell you whatever product, you know, to better get, you know, it's crazy to me now. Sometimes like I'll look at something on Amazon or whatever on my iPhone. Then I go on my computer at home and suddenly the banner ads are the same thing telling me buy this, you know, I'm like, how are they, you know, but yeah, it's big business. And yeah, I don't think, anyways, yeah, hopefully by showing the darker side or something gets a conversation going, I think. Yeah, totally. So it's been about 5 years now from when I started writing the script to today. So all the Snowden leaks actually happened after I had finished the script. And it's happened so many times during these 5 years that, you know, where Snowden leaks or some other relevant news article comes out and people are like, you need to release this movie right now, you know, like it's so relevant right now. And 2 months later, there's another big story, you know, so I think it's constantly relevant, I guess. But yeah, no, I wasn't particularly influenced by the Snowden leaks. That happened after the script was actually finished. Yeah, absolutely. I think the answers lie in, yeah, practicing and controlling the thoughts we cultivate and, you know, being aware of where we're going in life and how we're using communication technology. And, you know, even built right into the story structure of the film. Like, I guess you had read my director's statement, I guess my sort of beginning that's like, I got into movies because I believe movies can change the world, you know, and that's why I'm telling stories. And some people think that's sort of a naive viewpoint, but I really tried to gently build that right into the story structure of the film, actually, that it starts very small. You know, it's 2 guys in a garage, you know, and it's this little domestic drama. And then we keep raising the stakes till by the end, the world literally hangs in the balance. And that's sort of what I believe, I guess. Maybe the thoughts you cultivate, the relationships and what you have going on at home with your spouse or with your kids, you know, what you're doing in your garage just might have global implications.
Well,
you know?
I mean, Apple started with 2 guys in a garage.
Right.
And now we've almost all got, you know, one of their products in our pockets.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Someone in the audience was talking about Snowden, but actually the aspect of Edward Snowden that made me think of was the lone whistleblower being able to stop these large corporations or governments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, David in the film's put in a no-win situation, you know, where there's no right way, I guess. There's no good option for him. And yeah, I guess there wasn't an easy way to just do a whistleblowing thing or, you know, bring it out in public. And also, it is a movie, I guess, where we're trying to wow the audience in the end, and it really turns into a more traditional sci-fi thriller by the end. So, yeah. Well, so my sort of viewpoint on it, in another, you know, theme that runs throughout the film is none of the characters ever really line up having good intentions and good actions, you know, lining up, you know, we need to do the right thing, but we have to be doing the right thing for the right reasons. And I think there's just no way around that. You know, if we really want to progress in a positive way, you know, you have to have those two things lined up. And that's why David ends up in this no-win situation, you know, like, and yeah, the arguments I think are strong on either side, from David's point of view and Ryan's point of view. You know, they have their own motivations and they have their own logical arguments, I guess, but they never quite line those things up. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
No, I think that's what balances the story at the end. I mean, it's Khalil weaves it so well in the sense that both sides, both stories that are told, are both valid, and you can understand how one may be useful for those locked-in patients, and yet another one you're crossing ethical lines. And I think that's why the story is applicable now, because moving forward, I feel like this is something that every day we are faced with. It's just the question of how much do we choose to enable that to happen. But I also think that's why it's a good story to tell, because that's the struggle.